Sonic Unleashed. Where to begin? Well, I recently restreamed the story for this game back in December, along with all the extra stages, and let's just say there's a lot to talk about. First of all, I love this game. I wouldn't be reviewing it otherwise. Second of all, this will be an in-depth review covering the whole gamut of the game, including DLC. This review will be split into 4 main talking points: story, gameplay, presentation, and endgame. Also, this will be covering the HD version of the game made by Sonic Team. Sorry for those who wanted a review of the Wii and PS2 versions by Nips. Before beginning, if you like the content of this review, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell for future updates. So much on Chili Dog, or Acorn if you prefer, and we'll tour the world of Sonic Unleashed together. One of the most important factors of any form of media is story. There will be spoilers here, so please feel free to skip to the next section if you want. So here's the premise. Dr. Eggman has split the world apart into 7 pieces, and Sonic, along with his new traveling companion Chip, must put it back together and prevent the monster known as Dark Gaia from reawakening and destroying everything. As byproducts of the world breaking apart, Sonic is transformed into a Lycan known as Sonic the Warthog. The sun goes down, and the Chaos Emeralds are depleted of their energy. If it weren't for the cartoony art style, this plot wouldn't be out of place in the Lovecraft story. Sonic travels through 8 distinct countries to piece the planet back together before confronting Eggman in his dream nation, Eggman Land. From the breezy Isles of Apatos, through the snowy polar region of Holiska, and culminating in the tropical paradise island nation of Adavat, each of these locations are inspired by real-life locales and landmarks. Some of these, like Petra and Jordan, the inspiration for Shamar, I didn't even know about until playing this game. Who says video games can't be educational? 6 of the nations, Sari, Apatos, and Empire City, contain a Temple of Gaia that Sonic and Chip must visit and place a Chaos Emerald to restore their respective pieces of the planet together. Once the 6 pieces in place, the duo travel to Eggman Land to confront the evil Doctor who has succeeded in reawakening Dark Gaia. I'll talk about this fight later, but for now, let's say they succeed and the world is saved. On a plot standpoint, the story's good enough, but there were a few things that bothered me. The biggest one is the fact that most of the time, the world's inhabitants are content, almost complacent, that Eggman broke the world apart. A disaster of this magnitude turned nearly everyone's heads and should cause the nation's leaders to come up with a solution to the obvious. At the very least, there should have been a meeting where representatives of 8 nations meet up somewhere to discuss the matter. Only 2 heads of state besides Eggman are in the game. One is completely forgetful of his surroundings, and the other steps down to tour the world himself. Perhaps I'm thinking too much about international politics in a Sonic game, but there are a few other issues I encountered. The fact that people are capable of traveling from one country to another while the planet is still broken is also a plot hole I couldn't ignore. For example, a sailor from Apatos journeys over to Adabat before the Eggmanizer is defeated. The game specifically mentions he sailed there from Apatos, but that would not be possible if the planet were broken. The other characters I could give an excuse that either they flew from one place to another, or they just so happened to be abroad when Eggman broke the planet. Maybe I'm nitpicking. The story itself takes a more humorous tone than other games in the series. One of my favorite characters, who makes his debut here, is Eggman's sassy assistant Orbot. Nearly every line from him is a riot, but here are a few personal favorites.
We're not telling you anything!
Your skill at self-aggrandizement is unparalleled. You can simply begin your plans anew. Even if all of your efforts this last time were utterly wasted, even if it was a complete and utter humiliating loss.
It's a shame they changed his voice later on in the series. Anyway, other prominent characters are Tails, who honestly doesn't do much in this game, Amy, who really doesn't do much either, and Professor Pickle, a faculty member at Spagonia University who is the only human character I see trying to fix the problem of the world being broken apart. He is kidnapped early on by Eggman since he has the Gaia manuscripts, which explain where each of the temples are and what they do. He acts as the mentor in the story, telling Sonic where to go, almost to a fault. Structurally, after the linear opening act, you're expected to visit Professor Pickle every 2 to 3 stages. Later in the game, visits are less frequent, but they're still required even on repeat playthroughs. The most annoying part is when you must visit him after Spagonia's Day stage, and Chunon's for an unrelated matter, even though you can access the area's boss from having both halves of the Gaia key needed to access its temple. Overall, kids wouldn't care about the political aspects being ignored, and the story's rather lighthearted, so if you just want to relax, I wouldn't worry about the story too much. Sonic Unleashed, for the most part, is divided into 2 distinct modes, day stages and night stages. The 2 styles are drastically different from each other, so I'll discuss them separately. In general, daytime levels are your classic Sonic fare. high speed, high adrenaline, and fast paced. Sega claimed at the time of this game's launch that Sonic would be traveling around 300 miles per hour at his fastest, and it shows here. The goal is simple, usually. Get to the goal ring as fast as possible. The reason I say usually is because if you want a highly coveted S rank, you'll need to rack up a high score. Time, number of rings collected, enemies defeated, trick rings, and how fast you go through the level's checkpoints and the goal ring are all factors in determining your final score. On the flip side, perform poorly, the Tokyo Philharmonic Orchestra will remind you of your failure. Most daytime levels focus on a variety of gimmicks or stage features that are unique to that level. For example, True Knot has rotating turntables and fireworks that launch you from one part of the level to another. Missouri has swimming pools that are only found there. Polska has a box sled that Sonic can ride for parts of the level, and the list goes on. Most storyline daytime levels can be beaten in less than 4 minutes if you know what you're doing. Spagoni and Agbat are quite a bit longer with runtimes of roughly 4.5 to 6 minutes. I'm more in favor of long levels, though length has its limits, which will be discussed later in the review. All stages contain lots of enemies that Sonic must cruise through, along with quick time events that can be punishing or even fatal if missed. Bonus stages that are not required for the story will take these gimmicks and exaggerate them. For example, there is one extra level of Shamar that will test your reflexes through multiple touch plays and trick preps that all require quick reaction times lest you fall into the sandy abyss and die. Another level of Juvenon revolves entirely around the turntable platforms I mentioned earlier. If DLC is included, there are a total of 47 daytime stages to master. Some are obviously harder than others, but a few of them are Kaizo-level feats of endurance. To this day, Chunon Act 2-2 in particular is the only stage in this game I have never beaten. While the stages required for the story are balanced enough, though I think Chunon in general is harder than the other countries despite being fifth in order, the extra acts are Sonic Team's way of giving players who love a difficult challenge a means of fulfilling their thirst for the unconquerable. Some day stages have special objectives that must be completed to clear the stage, all of which are only optional levels. 2 stages require rescuing 10 chows scattered throughout the level. One level in Missouri requires Sonic to collect 300 rings before reaching the goal, and several others have time limits. While I don't mind these for side town missions, which we'll cover later, I feel like the main stages for the game should be some place to the goal. On the opposite end of the spectrum, at night, Sonic transforms into Sonic the Werehog due to absorbing a portion of Dark Eye's energy when Eggman broke the world apart. The stages at night are far slower and focus more on platforming and combat. The Werehog has stretchy arms that are capable of gripping onto poles, ledges, and certain enemies, and you must use these skills to advance further. Scoring is different than in the day stages, with your rank determined by combos, enemies defeated, critical attacks which I'll explain in a bit, and rings collected. Time is a factor too, but it's not as important as it is when the sun's out. There's a lot to talk about for the night stages, so I'll break it down by mechanic. First, let's discuss combat. Groups of enemies, which are either Eggman's robots, Dark Eye spawns, or both, will attempt to clobber you to death. The Werehog can learn different moves that are obtained through gaining experience points as you play through the levels, which you can use to fight back. There is a whole list with some rather corny names for the ones you've unlocked for reference whenever the game is paused. To be honest, there was one main move I used for fighting, and it's the dash stone attack seen here. It plows through most enemies quickly. Weaken certain types of enemies enough, and you can perform a critical attack, which is a series of quick time events that must be done correctly. Do them right, and the enemy will die instantly, and you'll get a hefty bonus to your score. Fail, and the enemy will get some of its health back, and you'll take quite a bit of damage. Some night stages, like Apatos and Symphonia, depend heavily on these critical attacks for that much desired S rank. Other night stages place more emphasis on platforming, like Empire City where there are lots of poles to jump between and spike beams to cross, while others like Polska focus on solving puzzles. Most night stages have at least one unique element to them. Polska is the fact that you must melt ice in several locations to advance further in the stage. On the flip side, Shamar's fire wizards and dark eel enemies are found nowhere else in the main story levels. I find the night stages to be refreshing and a nice change of pace compared to the high adrenaline daytime levels. On the topic of DLC, there are a few levels that introduce exclusive mechanics. Polska has candles that have to be lit, and Adma has a cool water puzzle similar to the Water Temple in Ocarina of Time. The nighttime DLC stages, for the most part, are far more balanced than their daytime equivalents, relying less on cheap tricks and trial and error, and instead providing new places to explore. In total, there are 28 night stages to play, including DLC. The biggest gripe by far in the night stages is the battle music. As soon as an enemy spawns, or you attack one off guard, a bombastic jazz performance begins, and it chokes out the ambient stage music. If I could count how many times this happened to me on my stream, I think we'd hit triple digits. In not a bad song in itself, but it's massively overplayed. Could you imagine this as your battle theme in a Final Fantasy game? There are 6 bosses in the game prior to Eggman Land. 3 of them, fought in Missouri, Spagonia, and Adamat, are fought during the day, while the other 3 in Chunon, Holiska, and Shamar are all night romps. Every time Sonic defeats a boss, a piece of the planet is restored, and sometimes new places will be opened up throughout the world. Daytime bosses have similar premises. Sonic charges towards the boss and must boost into it whenever it's vulnerable. Later bosses like the Egg Devil Ray in Spagonia or the Egg Lancer in Adamat are resistant to homing attacks. The Egg Lancer in particular stands out among the daytime bosses as it provides touchplate and trick QTEs to deal significant amounts of damage. Most of these fights can be cleared in about a minute. Nighttime bosses are another beast. All 3 of them have their own mechanics. Dark Gaia Phoenix in Chunon depends on you dousing the bird with water before going in for a QTE-based kill. Dark Moray in Holiska requires you to freeze the boss with liquid nitrogen or attacking 3 marked weak points on its body. Dark Guardian in Shamar is a block puzzle boss where 3 weighted blocks must be pushed to the far side of the arena to do new damage. In all, I think the night bosses are better designed even though they can take longer than their daytime equivalents. Twice in the story, Sonic will need Tails' help to travel from point A to point B. Enter Tornado Defense missions. These are rail shooter levels in which you must press the appropriate button to defeat enemies and prevent missiles from attacking the plane. At the end of each mission, the Egg Cauldron will ambush the duo, and will throw a barrage of missiles and robots at them to shoot them out of the sky. Either let the timer run out, or defeat the Cauldron to finish the stage. There are 2 gauges at the bottom of the screen in this mode, Shield and Energy. Shield is your health, and Energy is your firepower. Healing is not possible, so prevention is the best strategy. Fire weapons too fast, and your plane won't have enough energy to defend itself. These levels are difficult to master, and I have never gotten a mess rank on either stage. Personally, I wish that there were more of these stages with the ability to control the plane manually and not have to rely on QTEs. In a way, I'm glad it only occurred twice in this form, though. Between stages, Sonic has the opportunity to explore towns in the countries he and Chip visit. These are cute little hub worlds that provide a sense of world building to the game. There are nearly 100 NPC characters for Sonic to chat with spread across 9 countries, and each of them has his or her unique personality and appearance. Several of these NPCs will travel between locations as well. For example, there is a reporter from Empire City who will visit the different nations to get the latest news on the planet breaking apart, and she will interview Sonic for the scoop she wants. That being said, there was one side quest that would not fly today. A business tycoon, also from Empire City, wants Sonic to deliver presents to a little girl in Spagonia who is too busy helping her aged grandmother to enjoy life. This gave me Lolita vibes playing the quest, and it didn't help that the girl has a similar name. While I'm glad the tycoon gets his comeuppance in the end, the fact that this isn't a Sonic game baffles me. Some of these NPCs will also assign Sonic missions within the main levels to complete. Some of them are fairly straightforward, such as racing through a level to get an item. Others are far more tedious. Missing Sister in Shamar and Kung Fu Speed in Chunon come to mind as the most difficult town missions in the game. At night, you may have to protect an NPC from enemy attacks, or defeat a certain number of enemies. In addition, every nation has its own shop, in which Sonic can buy food, records, videotapes, and souvenirs to give to Professor Pickle. The food consumed can provide experience points for Sonic to level up his stats, or he can feed the Chip to get his reaction. There are even 3 bonus cutscenes that can only be obtained from feeding Chip certain foods. Records, art books, and videotapes can be played in Professor Pickle's laboratories in Spagonia or Shamar once collected, and this acts as the theater mode. A nice touch in a way, and it provides that immersion I long for. Souvenirs given to Professor Pickle provide hints on how to beat the levels, and sometimes the Professor will give you additional rewards. All towns also contain one hot dog vendor that can provide specialty chili dogs for Sonic if he can complete special missions for them. The key word is if. There are 5 missions per country, and all must be completed without dying. Time trials, available day and night, require getting to the end of the stage at a time limit. Ring trials require a certain number of rings, enemy trials require defeating a certain number of enemies, and survival trials limit your healing in the night stages. Just outside the towns, there are entrance stages that act as hubs to the main levels for the game. Each of these entrances, known as Gaia Gates, requires a certain amount of power from the sun or moon to activate. This power is obtained through sun and moon medals spread throughout the world. Out of 200, 120 sun medals and 80 moon medals are required to finish the main story. Though both types can be collected almost anywhere, moon medals are usually found in day stages and sun medals at night. 36 of each can be found in the towns and entrance stages alone, making it fairly easy to obtain the medals required. Aesthetics can make or break a game, and Sonic Unleashed really delivers. The opening cutscene holds up even today and would be perfectly acceptable if Sega decided to make an animated Sonic movie for theaters. With the live-action series in progress at the time of this review, that probably won't happen, but that's besides the point. This game is gorgeous to play and even to watch when performed perfectly, almost like an art form in itself. The game came out in 2008, and in some ways, the graphics were ahead of their time. A recent patch for the Xbox Series X boosted the game's maximum frame rate to 60 frames per second, and in some ways, it helps a lot. One nitpick I noticed even back when this game was released that some of the buildings in Spagonia's background look like Lego houses. Visually, every stage has its own unique flair. As stated before, every country Sonic visits outside Eggman Land is based on a real-life location. Apatos is built around the Greek island of Mykonos, Missouri is based on sub-Saharan Africa and the Great Mosque of Djenné in Mali. Spagonia is the take on continental Europe, particularly Italy, and the Great Clock Towers in Switzerland and Germany. Chunan is based on China. Polska is a mix of Antarctica and the Inuit people of Alaska and northern Canada. Shamar, as stated before, is based on Petra and Jordan. Empire City is New York City, and Adabat is built around Southeast Asia, but the Temple of Angkor Wat in Cambodia is a particular inspiration. My personal favorite country to visit in Sonic Unleashed is Adabat. Its crystalline beaches, tropical jungles, and laid-back island atmosphere is the perfect place to relax. The music tracks in this game are some of the most ambient themes you'll ever hear. Nearly every song in this game hits a home run. Rather than talk about the music, it's best to listen to a few short samples. From high adrenaline daytime stage themes, to the contemplative or sometimes relaxing night themes. And even some of the town themes. Does this song remind you of Christmas time? Now, the main themes, Endless Possibility and Dear My Friend, neither of which I will be playing unless I get a copyright strike, are artistically as different as Night and Day as the day and night stages for this game. The former is a high-pumping alternative rock song sung by Jarrett Reddick of Bowling for Soup, while Brent Cash sings the much more somber ending theme. Both songs can be found elsewhere on YouTube. Up until now, I have been discussing the flow of the first 3 quarters of the game. The last 25% is the journey to Eggman's dream nation, Eggman Land. This twisted place is part amusement park, part lava pit, and all path track. After a tornado defense vision, Sonic and Chip arrive in the evil country and are taunted by its headed state to make their way inside. Eggman Land is one of the longest levels in the entire Sonic series. It is 6 segments of non-stop torture in which Sonic must switch between daytime mode and nighttime mode. This level holds nothing back and is the ultimate test in everything I've heard in the entire game up until now. Difficult sections in particular are roller coaster segments similar to the bobsled in Holoska and a tight-roping section across metal pipes over a pit of boiling lava. My first attempt took me nearly an hour, and later runs last about 20 to 30 minutes. The longest night stages in comparison can all be X-ranked in less than 10. The best I've done in Eggman Land was just under 15 minutes. Clear this stage, and Sonic will place the 7th Chaos Emerald to get to restore the final piece of the planet. Not all is well though, as Eggman ambushes you outside the temple entrance with his latest creation, the Egg Guru. This fight is fairly straightforward, so I won't discuss it much. Nothing you haven't seen before. The only thing I should note is that there is a finite number of platforms acting as a soft time limit for the fight. Most players should easily defeat the boss on the 2nd or 3rd platform. Once the Egg Guru is destroyed, Dark Gaia reawakens, and it's time to face off against him, and this fight is brutal. If there were one single thing I would change in Sonic Unleashed, it would be this. This battle is broken up into 2 main phases, each of which have multiple mini-phases within. In Phase 1, you play as Chip, who has assembled the 7 Gaia temples into a flying golem called the Gaia Colossus. Your goal is to approach Dark Gaia while avoiding meteors of magma and giant laser beams. While I learned after the fact that the meteors can be attacked using the trigger buttons, The important thing to take away is that the game throws you to the wolves, or hogs, and expects you to learn controls on the fly. The lasers, on the other hand, cannot be dodged. It's best to guard on one side, then move to the other as the laser fires to minimize damage. There is no way to heal in this part of the fight. In addition, I don't know any way to not take damage from the laser. Once the Colossus reaches Dark Gaia, if you made it this far into the review, you should probably know what happens next. After throwing a few successful punches, you'll move into by far the most infuriating part of the fight. Sonic must speed through a portion of the Colossus to get close enough to Dark Gaia in order to damage one of its eyes. This by itself wouldn't be so bad if it weren't for a strict time limit. This whole sequence is done 3 times, and each tempo run is harder than the last. I'll let my failures speak for themselves here.
Oh, come on! Goddamn, fuck you!
After the most welcome QTE that stops the timer, Sonic will absorb the Chaos Emeralds and transform into Supersonic. This begins the second main phase. Here, your first objective is to approach a massive shield Dark Gaia creates with a group of tentacled snakes. This is also Supersonic's only opportunity to collect rings in this phase. On top of that, he has a life bar in addition to chips. Anything Dark Gaia or the snakes throw at you will do massive damage, and if Chip dies, so do you. Once you reach the shield, your objective is to defeat the snakes. The only thing you can do is boost, and thankfully Sonic will lock onto each snakehead if he's close enough. Meanwhile, Chip will be distracting Dark Gaia. Kill all the snakes and the shield will disappear, and then take a guess what happens. You don't have to. The last of these QTEs is by far the worst. I swear I may have to get new patty for my X button after this fight. Once that's done, the fight ends. Dark Gaia collapses into the planet's core, and you get to see the ending. It's bittersweet since Chip also has to seal himself in the planet as well. The credits roll, and you get to see postcard pictures of Sonic and Chip having fun in all the countries you visited. In the post-game, you can travel to Eggman Land's town area and talk to 3 robots who don't seem to realize their worst enemy is right in front of them. One of them even runs a shop that, in all honesty, should not be purchased from. Of course you can get the souvenirs and all, but that would be the only reason I shop there. Now that I've pretty much covered everything, I guess it's time for my final thoughts. This game is the epitome of effort as far as Sonic Team is concerned. They bounced back from the disaster of Sonic 06, and then delivered their magnum opus 2 years later. It's a shame the games went downhill afterwards, though Frontiers was a step in the right direction. It's not perfect, no game is. This game is an example of what Sonic can potentially be at its greatest, and should serve as inspiration for what Sonic can do if they want the series to return to its former glory. If you made it this far into the review, thank you for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys next time.